get into this, give us some background about yourself, not as a counsellor, as who you are, what you do, and things like that.
Yeah, 47. I'm a chartered civil engineer. I'm married to Amanda, who you know. Some of you won't know, but Amanda is the borough councillor for Coity. We've got 3 kids. Two of them are football mad. One of them is artistic, loves dancing, loves singing, born performer, I think. And yeah, so as I said, lived in Coity now since 2004. Prior to that, was born and bred in Carmarthen, down in West Wales there, Cardiff University, worked away a lot, met Amanda 2003, and we settled in Coity not long afterwards. Yeah, been there ever since. Love it, absolutely love it.
I understand Amanda's actually very local. She's born and bred Bridgend. Her
Yeah,
parents
yeah,
been
very
here
much so, yeah.
for years and involved. So, when did you first get into politics, and what made you stand to be a community councillor?
Yeah, I think there's two sort of awakenings into politics. I was always, as a teenager, I wasn't quite William Hague, but I was a bit like that, really, really interested. Watched far too much Question Time and things like that in my sort of mid-late teens. Stood in a couple of school elections, and I would have said then that I was very interested in politics, capital P politics, party politics, that sort of thing. And then, yeah, then I grew up a bit, didn't I? And I went to university, I got a job, worked hard at that, got married, raised a family, and you suddenly realise that a lot of that stuff isn't really very important after all. But increasingly, I think there are two things coming together, really. There was, Amanda and I, from whenever we moved into the village, from quite an early stage, we became quite involved in what was going on there. Coity, as you know, is a very active community. There's lots of things happening from, back then. There was a village fete, firework displays, and more recently jamming the castle and Easter egg hunts and so on and so forth. And so we got involved in a small way in the village association and that sort of thing. And in some ways, looking back, I guess it was an inevitability that then I would get more interested in the community council and what the community council could do. But I think the other thing is, and it wasn't just inevitable. I think they increasingly became aware of a number of issues impacting Coity at the time. Coity was being surrounded by development, and it didn't seem as though you can't turn the tide. So there was a lot of development going on. It was clearly a done deal. Park Derwyn, Castell, Gather Castell, all surrounding Coity. The prison was expanding. A lot of these things going on, and also a lot of huge traffic problems, which I'm sure we'll come back to again. And it just seemed to me that Coity was having a rough deal. Not so much that the development was there, because loads of friends in Park Derwyn, Castell, places like that. Loads of good friends I wouldn't have met otherwise, but I don't think we were getting a good deal off the back of that at Coity. And ultimately, those who, Section 106 stuff, the facilities off the back of the developments that were happening, and ultimately, as those developments happened, you'd see that the slowness in the facilities, the promised facilities coming, other promised facilities perhaps not coming at all, and just a sense of increasing frustration. Something's got to be done. And I think two things clinched it for me. One was when they sold the old primary school. So they sold the site, which you would, yeah. I mean, we can discuss whether they should have kept it on as a stepping stone or a nursery facility for a few years until things were settled down. But they sold it. There seemed to be very little consultation. It was done. It wasn't underhand. It was done in the correct channels, but it wasn't massively publicised. Certainly not locally. And the field went with it, and I wrote to, it was really late in the day. I think I wrote to the community council, not perhaps realising what their powers were and weren't, saying, look, you need to, you need to lobby on our behalf. You need to, have you asked if you can have the village? You can have the whole old field, old school field. Have you asked that? What have you done with regard to protecting the building? Does it, will it be knocked down, or should you? I said it was an iconic building, this sort of thing, and I pretty much rebuffed that it wasn't their job, it wasn't important, they couldn't interfere, that sort of response, and yeah, so there was that. And the other thing, so that was perhaps a negative sort of motivation, but the other thing was our colleague Bernard was already on the community council, and he'd been involved in the very beginnings of what's now become our community access plan. Quite how advanced it was at that time, I don't know. I think discussions, and I wanted part of that. I think I had experience and skills to offer in that. I wanted to be part of that. I thought I could make a difference. I hate saying make a difference because it's quite a cliche, isn't it? But there was a real practical difference I could make there. And then there was a vacancy. A long-standing community councillor resigned, and that vacancy came about. And yeah, that was fun. So I'd already inquired about co-option, and it didn't happen. So even though I was perhaps politically naive then, and I think Alex might have talked about co-option, and I can't remember the circumstances. A councillor resigned, then somehow unresigned after I'd expressed an interest. I'm not quite sure how that happened anyway. And so I said, right, well, I'm going to do this. I remember saying to Amanda long before she'd considered being a borough councillor, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for it. And I decided the only way to do that was to go straight through the front door. I'd come to conclude that there was no opportunity, no very little prospect of me being co-opted on there. And so, yeah, we scrabbled around, found our 10 signatures, called an election. That was interesting. We didn't have a petition then. We weren't super slick. We encouraging neighbours to write to the council, that sort of thing. Yeah, and by election, won. Two independents, which was good, which is how it should be. Yeah, and I got on the community council, so that's what got me there. So I mean, I guess it was, in summary, it was trying to be an active and contributory resident of the community, but also, at the same time, these mounting frustrations that our voice, firstly perhaps the village, because that's what it was when I first moved in, and increasingly the wider Coity and beyond now, Coity Higher, just our voice wasn't being heard. And I think the two things came together with an opportunity. And yeah, so that's what took me to where I am.
You spoke about the field that you said that the community council would take over, and they didn't want to at the time. Is that now the field that the community council is? No, it's the one next to it. And actually, I don't think it was a matter that they didn't want to. I just don't think they thought to ask. I don't go too much into this because people, time has moved on, and the field was sold as part of the school plot. I think what my frustration is that it was sold in the knowledge that it could never be developed because it's in a conservation area. So in theory, my argument was that it was therefore effectively worthless from a development potential. It just wasn't considered. I think I was probably a little bit late to it. Having said that, it's now been, there are seven fantastic houses on that site, and the field is a paddock annexed onto one of those. So time's moved on. I just thought at that time there was an opportunity that they again, not even an opportunity. They didn't fight. They didn't fight, and I think that was my frustration. They didn't fight. They didn't ask. They didn't push. Right. And whether or not they wanted it, or whether or not, whether or not it would ever have happened, they didn't push, they didn't ask, they didn't stand up, and there was too little of that going on at the time. Well, we are here to speak about your role as a community councillor for Coity Higher, but you're also a councillor on another community council in St Bride's Minor, aren't you?
Yes, I am. We were briefly colleagues there, yeah.
Yeah, we were briefly colleagues on there. I won't speak to you about St Bride's Minor. I would like to get another councillor from there dedicated.
Yeah, that's fine. There,
yeah. Because
You're deputy chair of Coity Hire. I think it's more important that you focus on that on this interview. That's what I'm going for. So